All right. Good evening, everyone. This is Sky Juice coming to you live and direct from the beautiful island of Puerto Rico. And this is the Sky Juice show coming to you live and direct from my living room. And I have decided to interview amazing people in the world who are making a difference and who bring their interesting stories so that we can learn and grow and share. This is all about awareness. So tonight we are going to be talking to Minister Kwabena, and he is based out of Baltimore. I hope you don't hear too much background noise because he's actually on the road as we speak. But we're going to be talking to him about polygamy and polyamory and what that really means. I've been mentioning it several times on my page on Facebook, and a lot of it has been negative. So it's definitely not the popular conversation. I have a few questions that I want to ask him, but I definitely can speak from my own personal thoughts about it is, you know, more, I'm just basing it on a more like in theory, not in practice. In theory, you know, when I hear that there are going to be women on the planet that will never have a mate, that is actually where I become sensitive to what polygamy and polyamory represents. That's kind of where now I'm not into it per se in the respect of like this, oh, a man needs to have a whole bunch of women and I just want to be one of them. I'm not into it in that respect, but I'm positively, I can get it. I can get with the program of it just for the sake of, there are women out there who will never have a man. She will never meet someone because he's either going to be involved with someone else, he may be locked up, he may be gay, or what have you. So, and in fact, the very interesting thing, before I bring him into the conversation, the very interesting thing is I sent the email out this morning and a woman did respond to me. She emailed me back right away. And she said, Sky, I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it, but I'll listen to the recording. She said, I am 60 years old and I have yet to meet my husband. And I feel like that is my life mission now. Like I want to have a husband before I die. And I was like, wow, that is totally the thought I had behind this. And so that's kind of why I was inspired to do this. So you guys know. Anyway, welcome Minister Kwabena to the conversation. How are you?
Peace, family. How are you? I'm doing wonderful.
Great. You sound good. So tell me, I know you're in Baltimore. I know you're in Baltimore. What is it that you do? And tell me about the minister part. What is that all about? What are you ministering?
Well, I am in Tubman City, also known as Baltimore, in the beautiful state of Maryland on the East Coast of the United States of America, which in itself is a contradiction. And I think I'm just a minister of truth, I would say. I don't profess to be any better than anyone else, but I think what has driven me my entire life is to speak truth in the face of nonsense, of hypocrisy, of things, of tradition for the most part, for the sake of tradition. And, you know, I want to stay firmly grounded in the root of the realness of the world. And I don't subscribe to any illusions. I don't subscribe to any hocus pocus. And so I called myself a minister. But that's, you know, I really don't like to use that term. As a matter of fact, some of my fraternity brothers is like, what? Because it's not something I go around and I tout. It is who the creator made me from birth. And I didn't like that title, but in this language that we use here, I could say counselor. I could say teacher, but it's really I'm really a minister, and I am a teaching minister for the most part. I'm not a hoop and holler minister. As a matter of fact, when I had my ministry, it was a teaching ministry. Um, when I was, in that growth process of, learning my spirituality and how to express it and where I fit in, I realized I didn't fit into the traditional celebratory type of place. Like, that's what we do. Even black folks, we go to a place and we want to celebrate, even from not just the traditional Christian, but from the traditional African perspective. It is a celebratory process, an event. And I've never really vibed to that. I've always been like more of a teaching minister where I want to like see growth, like let's move towards something, let's build something. And that's also what I am. I'm a builder. I've been a builder since I was a kid. One of my oldest friends, a guy named Robbie Scott in Baltimore, used to say, "Man, you always got some nails in your pocket." When we were kids, we'd make the try to make the soapbox go-karts or whatever, or little things you slide down the hill with, and so I've been building from a really young age. And my mother used to ask me, said, "Did your father teach you this stuff?" I'm like, "No, not really, Mom. Pop just had tools around, and I would just use them." And so, even though he was a sort of a craftsman himself, but not to the level that I actually eventually achieved, but that's just who I am. I'm a builder, I'm a teacher, um, I'm a lover, and I'm a friend. And so, and my most important title is Bob, of course, father of three beautiful young ladies that it's my charge to raise up and to teach and to guide them in their own, process of life and living.
Wonderful. So let's just jump right into this whole conversation. What, I guess, in your frame of thought, what is polygamy, and also what is polyamory? Because I want to bounce back and forth between the two for the concept of, it's not all about men all day. I'm gonna bring that in because I think that's what a lot of people feel.
Right, and I don't have the Webster's dictionary in front of me, but briefly, my understanding of modern day use of those terms is polyamory, meaning more than one love. Amory, love, more than one love. And within the context of polyamory, you have what's, polygamy, which I believe is the traditional man having more than one wife, polygamy. And then you have polygyny, which is a woman having more than one husband or more than one male partner. And then within this new age term of polyamory, we have sort of a free love, or not even new, but sort of a revamp of the free love movement, which is people recognizing that in their life, their needs, sexually, intimately, emotionally, may not be met by the person that they've chosen to call their husband or wife, and having the ability to seek fulfillment outside of that traditional bond, but while maintaining the institution of marriage or whatever their relationship is, recognizing that sex is just a part of a relationship, or that the intimacy, or, there are people who just like being with somebody because of the books they read or the hobbies they have. It's not always about the salacious sexuality part of it, but recognizing that, a relationship is more than just these small things. And of course, most people hold them to the sexual part of it. That, a relationship, a marriage is more than just sex with somebody. There's so much more there. And, so those are the definitions of the, I guess, the different ways people move in terms of polyamorous relationships within those three constructs.
Mm-hmm. Very good. I think your definitions are very eloquent. Okay, so I'm going to get into my little list. It's random, so it's not going to be in any order, but feel free to delve deeper and be organic about it. It could be like a vine. So if it just goes in a different direction, it's all good. So we're going to try to just keep it like right under 1 hour, so we just don't
I
don't
don't know
go
about
too.
that one.
I mean, if it goes, look, I'm free. So if we get people who call in, or if they message me, then we'll go further. But anyway, so why are so many men attracted to it? And let me also bring to the fact that there are so many, I think most men are attracted to it. And I think while they're attracted to it, they rarely pursue it. You get what I'm saying? Like if you just post it in a group, men will be like, yeah, that's right, it's how it's supposed to be. But they're not really going there.
Right, right, yeah. Most of them are scared, or at least not foolish enough like me to just to be honest about it. Um, I was when we talking about this conversation, I'm thinking about it, and I've been getting friends of mine who've been texting me talking about, uh-oh. And so I wanted to be really responsible in this conversation, and so I've been thinking about, the best way to kind of express, my thoughts around polygamy. And that's where I want to speak from, for the most part, this evening about polygamy. I'm
Okay.
not a woman; I can't talk about polygyny or
Okay.
the open love requirements for women, but I do want to talk about, male sexuality and what I think is our responsibility. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
it was sort of a three-pronged approach of what's hit me, what's come to me as something I should mention. And for me, falling into this lifestyle or philosophy is the three areas, the three respective areas that come to mind. One is spiritually, the other is emotionally, and what was the third one I was just thinking? Spiritually, emotionally, and it'll come to me as
Physically?
I outlay it. Um, Spiritually, emotionally, and I guess it's practically is the word I want to say, because this process of becoming a man in this world, growing up in the '80s, and
Wait, I gotta mute myself. Go ahead.
growing up in the '80s, and then being part of the whole, you know, I call it the hip hop generation with Public Enemy, and the elevation of Malcolm X into the modern pantheon of heroes, I guess recently. Um, it was all about discovering who we were, or who I was as a black man, and who our people were. So my first heroes, in high school, graduating to college, I wanted to be Dr. King. The second hero, of course, was Malcolm X. And then, as a good sister, Iraka Rutherundu, back in the early '90s, she elevated my consciousness to become aware of Kemet. And of course, when you talk about Black history, people just think about, Negro history, and we knew that we were slaves. But then, of course, it goes much further than that. It goes to not just being the foundation of civilization, but being of course, the parents of all humanity, African people. And so, coming into that knowledge at 20, 21, 22, like, wow. So if this much could be hidden from us in plain sight, what else is it that we don't
Mm-hmm.
know? And so, in discovering myself and who I am, finding out that Jesus, of course, was more like Malcolm X than he was this lily white, effeminate looking picture that my grandmother and most of my relatives had in their living room right
Kitchen,
beside Dr.
yes.
King and
Yes.
and and JFK and Robert F. Kennedy, that he was an African. He was a person that lived in a place that was not disconnected from anywhere. There's no Middle East. There's no Holy Land. There was nothing dividing Northeast Africa from the part of the world that we call the Holy Land. I mean, you have I believe it's the Suez Canal that's there now, but that was never there, in past history. So anyway, in discovering who I am, the cultural piece, I had to ask myself, what is my role as a man? What am I supposed to be doing here?
Mm.
And understanding that there was a whole, historical piece and cultural continuity that we just don't get in this world, right? So that being the one thing, this new education. And then just being a young man, understanding the dynamics of human relationship and, quote unquote, men are dogs, right? And trying to reconcile, like, what's going on here? How can men be dogs? How can we maintain this certain behavior for forever, and it still be looked at as being negative. Like, no, if something is, if a person or being or group of people are doing something, it is more than just an anomaly. You know what I mean? Men being dogs is just a cheap way of trying to ignore something that's out of balance in our culture, if you
Well,
feel.
that
And so,
I completely get with you. I want to jump in, and the thought that just came to me is the fact that one of the reasons why women really can't get with this program is because they just have this selfish, I can't share my man thing. But then there is such a huge problem with cheating. And so it's like, how is there this natural feeling that men have? And I don't think it's just men. I think that's what people say. I think women and men have this feeling. But how is it that men and women want to actually, like, they have to hide this feeling that they want to be with somebody else because for the sake of their whole family and lifestyle, if they're found out, then their whole relationship is over and they get kicked out and they lose everything.
right, right. Well, all I can say is right now, the human species is at a point where it's never been like this before. We have abundant food. The family dynamic, excuse me, the family dynamic has totally lost its place. I mean, men don't need women, women don't need men, per se. And so everyone's out there trying to figure it out. Basically, our ancestors, it was set up through tradition. Like, everybody knew what their role was. And so if a man, was a hunter-gatherer kind of person, or I hate to use those kind of terms, but men would go out on hunting parties, and they would be gone from their village or their community for, several months at a time. And if they came across another village where there were women, it would be the custom for some of the men in that village to share their women with those men, and vice versa. If the women were still left behind and there were men traveling through their village, that they would share time with those men. And it didn't matter who was the father of the baby, because the babies were looked at as being a benefit, a bonus. It was everyone's responsibility to care for them. So this Western idea of the patriarchy and, finding the family through the bloodline of the male is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, men don't do anything. Women give birth to the baby, so the lineage is clearly through the woman. Even the what is it called, the mitochondrial DNA, that's only found in the woman. I mean, in essence, the cultural component that has ruled the world for the past 100, 200,000 years has been turned topsy-turvy in terms of African people and in terms of us trying to find our way. Now, I cannot speak for Western culture, because even though, well, I can speak for it, Western culture is based in lies. As soon as they created monogamy, they created prostitution. So, you know, I don't want to sound, what is it called? When you have a romanticized view of something, but there were no jails in Africa. There were no prostitutes in Africa. There were none of these institutions that we find ourselves, oppressed by in this modern culture. And so I'm not, again, trying to promote them as being idyllic, but what I am trying to say is the solution that we can find is outside of what we're doing now. If something doesn't work for you, you have to think about it. You have to analyze it. So that's been my approach in my life. I'll speak on
Actually,
something very, very
go ahead.
personal now.
Okay.
When I was growing up, I thought that my father cheated on my mother, and I saw in my community all of the fathers divorcing their wives. In my family, both of my parents had 9 siblings, and they were all getting divorced. Everyone on my father's side was getting a divorce. All of the uncles on my mother's side, all except one, they were all getting divorced. And so those are for various different reasons. I'm not saying they are all because of cheating and all this other kind of stuff, but at some one point in my life, I wanted my mother to leave my father. Like, my father was a real man. He was a real dude, real East Baltimore dude. And I was like, wow, all my cousins are in houses now with just their mom, and they got it easy. I'm like, yo, that's what I want. But I'm so glad that my mother and my father made it work, because my father was vital in making sure that I was a man and that we were
Mm.
protected and cared for. So at any rate, when I was a child, I thought my father had done some things and had made a few indiscretions. And, he probably may have. All I can remember is this one uh, Valentine's Day when we got a bunch of flowers and I was taking them all into the house. And he said, well, give that one to your sister. This one's for your mother. And there was another one in the van I was going to take out. And he said, leave that one there. And he started smiling. And I just left it alone, right? So I may be
Wow.
10 or 12. Yeah, right? Now, it could have been for my grandmother. I don't know. But it's the kind of smirk he had on his face. Like he couldn't look at me and he was smiling kind of thing that kind of let me know like, anyway. So it wasn't until I became a man that I realized that a man can love more than one woman. I found myself faced with that same thing like my freshman year. I had a girlfriend at home in Baltimore and I loved her, but I was at school and I was dealing with this other young woman from Philadelphia and I wanted to be honest about it and I wanted to, navigate those waters. But of course, I didn't know how back then. So eventually I did break up with my girl at Baltimore to try to pursue a relationship with somebody else. And it is possible to love more than one person. And so in dealing with that, I just wanted to be honest about it and begin to look at it from a perspective as I was discovering my cultural heritage and discovering my spiritual heritage. I also wanted to discover what did our ancestors do with regard to relationships. We can change our names. I legally changed my name to, Kamal Kwabena. I took on these philosophies of ancient Kemet in the way that I handle myself in terms of character and teachings and so forth. So what was I to do? Maintain a relationship just like the ones, you know, that were also responsible for the enslavement of my ancestors? So it's kind of like we have to evaluate the whole thing, not just bits and pieces. And that's what led me to wanting to be more honest in my dealings with women. And also, besides the fact that I found out that there's certain kind of benefits from communal relating that I think you're probably going to get into a little bit later. So I'm going to hold off on talking about that piece.
Okay, well that also, it kind of what you've been saying has already answered one of my questions, but I just want to relay it. Is this a religious thing? So a lot of the comments that I've gotten about this type of lifestyle have been, this is going against the Bible. I don't think it's going against the Bible, because from what I read, there's been a lot of people who've had many polygamous relationships in the Bible, and no one ever had a legal marriage in the Bible, as far as what I have studied. But, people take what they need from it, and a one man, one woman type of conversation, and they get irate. The irate part is what is so funny. But I guess the part that has always, I guess, boggled my mind is the honesty part. Why is it that, why is one ostracized for being honest? In other words, I've heard, and I relate it to cheating, and I relate it to cheating and polygamy and polyamory, because cheating is basically, I feel most cheaters, this is just my own perception, I feel like they really do want to say something about it. They really want to say to their wives, I met this great gal, she's awesome, she's so sweet to me, we want to go out to the movie. I really want to believe that they want to be honest. I really don't believe it's just this nasty 2 a.m. in the morning booty call type of life. I just really feel like they met someone who is really like cool to them, and they want to share it, but they can't because it's a stigma, or they'll be ass out. So why do you feel that? Like, why do people prefer, like, I just heard it today, actually. Someone said they know, the lady on the show I was watching said men are going to be men. Her grandmother said men are going to be men. Just make sure that they respect you enough to not let you find out. So why would people really rather live in a lie than just be straight up, open, and honest about, I rather the honesty, because the honesty promotes trust. So if you did fall in love with someone, or just even meet someone who's interesting, Why can't we just have that conversation? Why don't couples do that more?
That's a good question, and that's really, you need a cultural anthropologist to figure that one out, or a sociologist, or a psychiatrist. I have no idea. I've had women say, just be discreet about it. Or I've actually had friends of mine saying, man, being honest to your wife is selfish. I'm like, what? I'm like, yeah, man, you're being selfish. Just be discreet. Don't let her know what's going on. Don't hurt her like that. And I mean, I totally understand that. And so, in my dealings with people, um, there are different ways to have these types of relationships, and that is one that may be viable to some folks. Whereas a man just does what he's going to do, and to let his woman maintain her status in the community without it you know being salacious, as we say. She still gets to have the dignity, because the interesting piece is we live in this world. So no matter what we talk about, where we came from or where we want to go, we live right now in 2015 in a very selfish, self-centered world that is all about bullshit and never about truth and uh, balance and harmony. And so we have to realize that people have emotions and feelings, and so we do live in, like I said, in this world. And if we're tied to these communities that we live in, and everybody else is on one vibe, we can't just say, okay, well, you're my woman, you're with me, so now you have to ignore what the rest of the world is saying. And that's unfortunate right now, that that's what some people are left with. And it's been a struggle for me to maintain relationships and open relate, and to just still try to be loving, and to be everything and supportive, and be everything that's needed in a relationship, as well as this extra added piece. I'm not saying that a man has to be this way. I've been monogamous, I've been polyamorous, I've been sort of polygamous. I mean, currently I'm not in a relationship with multiple people. I've had that experience. It The way that I feel like I need to do it, or that I'm called to do it, is to take care of women, to make them better. I am spiritually, I believe it's my responsibility to be in service of womanhood, to be in service of women and children. And to do that, that's not just a booty call or whatever, as you say. It's about being responsible, and it's about making a person better than you found them. And when the last time I was in a polyamorous relationship, I had three women I was dealing with. One was local here, one was from Atlanta, and the other was from St. Louis. And I remember one month they all needed tires in their car. It was something like that. And so, like, for real, I remember going to, I think, the BF Goodrich here in Baltimore to pay for tires that my friend needed in St. Louis. And to do it the right way, it takes a lot. It's, again, this is more than about sex. It's about being there. It's about listening to people and talking to them and being a friend, and that takes time. And so if a man was going to do it to that level, it takes a lot. And unless you're going to have independently wealthy people, and everybody lives really close, and it can work out like that, then yeah, maybe having 3 or 4 lovers or people in a relationship might work for you. But for me, I felt that it was best that I just needed to focus, because I felt scattered at that point. So currently, I'm really seeking a monogamous relationship and working towards that, just because there's some things I want to get done, and I feel like I could do that better in a um, mono on mono kind of thing. But again, anyone that deals with me knows that that may not be a permanent. That's not going to be a permanent thing. It's just where I am in my
Right
life,
now.
in my rotation around the sun, right? And so, um, that'll be what it'll be. It's about communicating and being honest.
So that's another thing that came up. You mentioned the tires. So another thing that came up was the economics of these relationships. Now, I remember one woman saying, "Oh, I'm down with that. Make sure he gets me a house and he pays for everything." So basically, like you said, independently wealthy, basically from where she was coming from, in order for her to be comfortable in a relationship like this, where she's sharing, quote unquote, because that's basically how they feel, is she you know, he has to make sure he maintains everybody, however many there are. He has to maintain the household, pay the bills, buy the houses, you know, whether they all live together or near each other in different cities. And how would that work? I mean, that seems like you say, if he's not a millionaire, that's going to be pretty harsh.
Well, that's one construct of it. The other is this. Um, in traditional, African communities, to be honest with you, most of the work is done by the women. The women do the business of maintaining life. Most of the time, the men are just there to chase away the lion and to build some crap, to lift stuff that's heavy. I mean, if you go to a place, I mean, literally, the women are working. The men are sitting around talking, drinking coffee, and smoking cigarettes. I mean, it's really crazy. So I look at that as being a Western construct of the man just providing all this stuff. The best use of the African man is to help organize and strategize for Black women. If I was 20 years younger, I would go to a law school and a medical school, and I would be macking on chicks just like that. Like, look, we're going to all work together. We're going to have a medical center, and we're going to do all these things around the planet, and that's just how we're going to do it together as a family. And we all will have wealth, and we all will have resources. And I'm the man, and I'm here to help us organize what we're going to do. That's what men do. Life is listen, people. You take one thing away from what I'm saying tonight. Life is essentially feminine. The only reason the creator puts a penis on the planet is to procreate. So if you look at it, you've got 100 women, it takes, 2 or 3 men to really procreate, those 100 women. So by the time you reach 22 or 21 years old, you have X amount of women for X amount of men. And, really, we're just here to keep the species going. I mean, a jungle. Let's take an example for a jungle. A jungle is life is most present in a jungle, right? There's more life per square inch in a jungle than anywhere on the planet, right? But what is a jungle? A jungle is chaotic. It's got stuff going on everywhere. It's got birds in the upper stratosphere. It's got, primates in the middle, and then it's got all kinds of snakes and everything living in the ground and insects, and then beneath that there's other organisms and fungus. I mean, there's stuff everywhere. Life is essentially feminine. What does a man do? He comes in, he chops down a tree. So
that's all I was thinking.
that's what men do. Men come, and even in the Kemetic philosophy, there was the primordial waters of noon, and Atum spoke Atum into existence by saying that I am. That is the male principle. Life is essentially feminine, and men add structure to that matter. So a man comes down and he cuts down, trees and builds a house, and then we notice that it's going to rain, it's going to flood. What do? We build a dam so that we protect our homes. But that's essentially what the male principle is. It's creating order out of chaos. And so, ladies, I'm not saying that women are chaos, but you guys are essentially life, and all we're here to do is to add a little structure to that piece and to help you get out of your heads.
Understood. So, okay, so now more politically, marriage equality has been the name of the game for the U.S. for the last few years, and they recently passed gay marriage throughout the United States. But that's not really quite marriage equality when it comes to polygamous families, polyamorous families. What is your thought behind what marriage equality really is and what it should possibly look like?
Well, I wanted to also speak to what you were talking about with regard to religion. I still consider myself a Christian, even though the Jesus that I'm talking about, his name is Haru, and his father name is Sar. But yeah, I still consider myself a Christian, and even as a traditional Christian in this country, there is no prohibition against having more than one wife. As a matter of fact, most of the people in that book that they're talking about had more than one wife. Some say even Yeshua ben Pandera, Jesus the Christ, had more than one wife. So there's no biblical prohibition. It says to each man take unto himself a wife. Some people says, well, a wife means one. No, it means you're supposed to have a wife. You can
at
have
least one.
a wife here and a wife. Yeah, at least one.
Okay.
The Bible preaches against adultery. It preaches against lust. But we're not talking about adultery, and we're not talking about lust. We're talking about love. And what is the main point of Jesus' ministry? Love and charity. So how can you be a loving man in a community when you know that this woman with these children her world is chaotic and she needs your help, but we won't help her. What kind of sister are you to see that this family and this woman is in need, but you don't want to share the resources that you have? The United States is the most hypocritical wannabe Christian nation in the world. We aren't a Christian nation. We're a nation that talks about it but never walks the walk. You know. So anyway, and that is deep within the culture that we have today, which is around this whole selfishness piece and why a person, both men and women, think that they have to own their spouses and own their mates.
Mm.
No one owns anyone unless, of course, you have a slave mentality, which, of course, is what the Western world does. When you take on the word MRS, Mrs., that means misters. That traditionally you were the property of that man whose name you took. So,
Hmm.
yeah,
Oh,
I told my,
I'm already there. I don't take on
yeah,
names.
I told my daughters, yeah, keep their name, have their husbands change their name. I mean, hey, whatever.
Exactly. Exactly. So go back to the marriage equality conversation.
Right. Well, at any rate, if you're going, all that to say, when I was talking about Christianity, in terms of marriage being between a man and a woman, the government has no right to tell anyone who they can marry and love. Period. So if a woman is allowed to marry another woman or a man allowed to marry another man, then the government also has no right to say that you can only love this one person, that you can't have a binding, loving relationship, which is really a contract with more than one person. It's ridiculous, and I think that's the next barrier in quote unquote this marriage equality thing.
It's gonna go
Yeah,
through.
yeah. The government has no right to tell anyone who they can marry and who they shouldn't. People say, well, what if somebody wants to marry a child? You know what? Now you're being ridiculous because eventually the society will allow what it will allow, right?
Hmm.
So there have been cultures where children got married. I mean, once you technically, you know, a woman was had her cycle, she was a woman and she got married. And what the problem is now, people aren't mature enough to handle that responsibility once their bodies are ready. So
Hmm.
now we have a culture that's sort of retarded than what nature used to say. But at any rate, we know people aren't going to allow that. And I'm not a proponent of that, but I'm trying to talk rationally to people who try to say silly things. I mean, our culture says that a person can marry another adult person that's willing and blase blase. So that could be two men, you know, or a man and
Two
three women,
men, two women.
or a woman and three men. It is what it is. You've got consenting adults. We're not talking about something of abuse or whatever. So if you have consenting grown folks, the government needs to stay out of it.
Right. I agree with that. Okay, so what about this? How do you handle hierarchy, insecurities, jealousy, ego amongst the family, a polygamous family, like and scheduling?
Well, in my most successful, um, I'm not going to call it an attempt. My most successful relationship, polyamorous, were with women who were polyamorous themselves. They had other men in their lives, and those men or that man or whatever it was, provided something that he provided, and then what I provided was what I provided. But I, it was all above board. Everyone. I remember I thought this was crazy, but one time we had a conference call to kind of see who was going to come to Baltimore when, because the women w- got to know each other and they would have conversations outside of me. I wasn't the center of this. The center of this thing was us as a group, trying to move forward and trying to love and to progress in this very cold, and distant world. And so it was a shock to me. It's just, they were talking to each other and texting and making plans and telling me what we're going to do. I'm like, okay, okay, all right, I'm feeling this. So to me, it was about having people that were just there, people on the same page who understood what the benefit was of it. If a person thinks someone is doing something to them and they're not signing, they're not clearly signing up for it, then there may be a problem. But if you have people who are, participants and are seeing the benefit and are coming to the table looking for something that could benefit them as well, then I think it works out differently. Whenever I've had a woman that was reluctant to be a part of it, typically didn't work. And I have had some success with mates who that's not their preferred thing, but it took a long time to get them to finally open up to it and to agree to be in this relationship. To like when my girlfriends would come from out of town, I would tell them this, that doesn't cut you off. If you need me, if you want me, if you still want to come by the house, that's what you do. Because she was in my life first, she was my primary, so she was like the first wife, the queen or whatever. And everyone else had to understand that too. Like, look, this is my friend who's been my friend before I met you guys. And so she has, as you say, been my ride or die. So she has some privileges that you guys don't. Because when my children, need someone to pick them up from school because I have to work late, you're going to be in Georgia, and you're going to be in wherever you are. So yes, she's in the trenches. And so she gets a little bit more privilege than everyone else does. And that's just the reality of it. You know what I mean? And I think
And
understanding that.
how do in that type of situation, how does the ones who are, like, I hate to say less than, but on the, you said you have your hierarchy. So if you have the queen, then number 2 and number 3, how are they taking that? Like, how do they take that? Do they just respect it, or does anyone ever feel like, well, I want to be number 1?
No, nobody ever wanted to be number 1 because, well, I can't say that. I don't know, but there was never any kind of expression of, not like. Well, how am I gonna say this? I guess there was a little bit of. I had one friend that kind of got upset because I had to take the number 1 to something and she couldn't go. It was a family event, and um, that's something that my number 1 wanted to do because she does it with my family all the time. And so I had to let her know, like, hey, this is what we do together. She has been there, and this is the event that she wants to do, and so that's what we're going to do. And that was a negotiating point. I had to take her to something else that was family related, because no one wants to also feel like they are not a part of the group as well. But that became the tricky piece about it, because then you have your family asking, well, who's she and who's she?
Right.
And
that was my next thought.
right. Well, I mean, it all works out though. This is my friend so and so. That's it. Keep it moving. To the depth of who she is in terms of my life, that's none of your business.
Gotcha.
Right. It is what it is. We're all grown folks.
So, where's my thought just jumped out? Wait, let me get my notes because I had it in me. Okay, this is something that I did see happening when I was in Philly 2 years ago. They actually happened to be Muslim, right? And when I say Muslim, I mean in attire. They had the appearance of what one would think was a Muslim. And apparently it was one guy with 2 women. So it appeared that they were in this polygamous relationship, which they were, but the 2 women were gay. So it was like this bisexual trilogy. And for me, I'm like, okay, that's cool, whatever works. I don't necessarily think that's under the guise of what Islam is, I'm sure. But have you seen, like, I don't know, I wouldn't call that kinky, but
No.
have you seen some stuff like that?
Yes, I have. I actually had a couple, a lesbian couple actually approached me. I don't know how long ago it was. It wasn't 10 years ago, but maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and approached me to be the man in their relationship. Like, I had a friendship with one, and she introduced me to her friend. We weren't sexual or anything like that. It was just conversations, whatever, and they knew what my aspirations were. And she's like, we could use someone like you. You're mature. We're both young. And she even called their relationship immature. They're always arguing about silly stuff, and that they needed a man in their relationship to kind of just help them work some stuff out, and it was the craziest damn thing in the world. I felt like they wanted me to be like their pimp, like their daddy. Like, can you help us out here? That's almost how it felt. But you know, they were yeah, they both were young and crazy. They would fight about stuff, and so I wasn't interested in that kind of thing. But yeah, I've actually been approached by a lesbian couple. I mean, I guess they were both bisexual because they still like men, but they happened to be in a relationship with each other at that point in time. And yeah, that's a little salacious, but yeah, that's the world we live in.
So, so you talked about your partners having other partners in the cities that they're in. What, and I guess this to me is probably one of the hardest parts for any side to wrap their mind around, is their partner being with someone else. So from a male perspective, how are you okay with, or what do you do to be okay with another man digging out your woman?
Well, here's the thing. Everything is not for everybody. Okay. And so there have been women that I've been with that I could not and would not be in a polyamorous relationship with them because of the way that they are. They didn't have enough bandwidth to literally manage more than one man. And sometimes and this is through their own words and telling me about their past relationships and how the men that they chose pretty much just didn't weren't good dudes. So I'm like, I don't know if I can be in a relationship with you in that way, because if you mess with some guy, and he puts his hands on you or something like that, it's gonna be a problem. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I could be in an open relationship just with somebody because they wanted to be in it. It's got to be with the right person. And so
Mm-hmm.
the women that I was in relationship with, not all of them had men at home, but the first person that I began to relate to, no, I'm sorry, not the first one, but the first recent one, after me and my wife broke up, her boyfriend was also in this online group, the guy that she lived with. And so when she was coming to Baltimore, I text him, was like, thanks for, taking her to the airport. I'm gonna take care of her when she gets here. He was like, cool. I just dropped her off. And then when she landed, I would text him she's here. And then when she landed back, she was like, I got her. So it was a real kind of mature man thing. Like, this is a woman that we love and we're taking care of her. Period.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a jealousy thing. I'm not really a jealous kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
The only time I've ever been jealous is when something was out of balance, like out of whack inside of a relationship. And that tells me that it's not really about the jealousy about a person, but it's something just out of whack. Like, I'm not, maybe I wasn't getting what I felt like I needed to get. And that may be sex, time, emotion. It could be anything. It's about being honest about what you're doing. So yeah, it's about dealing with things and to the reality of what they are. A vagina can have a baby. Ain't nobody gonna do no more damage than the baby does. So what you tripping for?
Yes.
Yeah, you just want her to, keep. Oh, this sounds so. I'm not going to go there with the whole sexual piece of it, but yeah, it's not even about that. Like, for me, the best benefit of having more than one woman is just having more than one friend that's willing to take care of me and love me and to be there for me. I mean, the sex part is cool, but that's not really what it's all about. I mean, it's really
It
about
it actually
more.
it actually is the first thing people think about, because um that is where their mind goes. I hear what you're saying, but as soon as you say I want more than one wife, or a woman wants to be in a polyamorous situation, or whomever it is wants more, they're thinking sexually. They're not thinking of anything else, because if it wasn't about sex, that's the only thing that changes a friendship into a relationship. Because I can go out with a male friend to the movies, you know what I'm saying? I can go to dinner with a male
Right.
friend. I can go play golf or running, or have a workout partner who is my friend, a male friend. When it becomes a sexual relationship is when it is now a problem. That's a problem. That's beyond friendship.
Right.
So
Well,
that's when people start getting a little like irritated, irate. whatever the word is, blasphemy. You know, they're just cursing. I mean, there's a lot because, and I personally see, I can't speak in a negative sense about it because I'm the same thing like you. I'm not jealous about sex. Like I don't care about stuff like that. Like I hear women, like some women I think are a bit ridiculous. I have female friends who, if their man accidentally, they call it an accident, if their man accidentally is with another woman, like he is like poison, like he just got a disease. Like she can't even touch him anymore. She doesn't even want him in her house. Like he just got attracted something. And I just think that's a bit ridiculous because I just know that the nature of human beings is really, what did I listened to some guy on YouTube the other day talking about human beings are whores. That's what he said. He said, we're whores. We want to have sex. We want to have a lot of it. And we want to have it with multiple people. It's just the confines of society that makes us challenge those thoughts. But that's why, you know, cheating is so prevalent in the society. But, you know, that's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, a whore, yeah, fine. Well, you have male whores and female whores. There's no difference.
Mm-hmm.
A person that wants to have sex with whoever they want to have sex with. I remember when I was in my marriage, we talked about, you know, opening our relationship up and doing things, and people would ask me, well, how could you do that with your wife? Clearly you love her and so forth and so on. I'm like, look, she was a grown woman when I met her, and she had made decisions and slept with other people before she started sleeping with me. So I have to trust the decision that she's going to make, that she's not going to bring somebody into our life that's going to, one, damage us and also damage, I mean, because we had children and stuff. So I had to trust her choices. And that's what it's all about. It's all about trust, and it's all about trusting your partner and having someone that you really love and can vibe with. And if you don't trust them, you shouldn't be with them, because they have the keys to your house and they have the numbers and code to your checking accounts. I mean, if a, you know, it's like, I tried to tell a friend of mine, my father would say he would prefer us to be in our home safe than to be out in the street and, you know, doing things that were bad. Because I could have female guests come stay at my house when I was in college. Like, I had a girlfriend that was from Philadelphia, and she could come down and stay. And they were cool with that because, again, my father said he'd rather for me be in a house than out at the mall having sex and doing all the other kind of stuff that teenagers do. And that, you know, I probably was guilty of as well, before I was in college. But at any rate, you know, that was his philosophy. And I kind of, you know, have that same philosophy. Now, I'm not going to tell my children this, but I'd rather for them to be safe and honest than to be out doing something stupid and make a mistake. But yeah.
So do you think that it takes a special type of person to be open to this type of lifestyle? Or is it something that you can actually learn to appreciate or learn? You know, is there like is there an education that one has to go through? Or do you think that it's just some people are going to be into it, some people are not? It's just pretty cut and dry, and that's where it is.
Yeah, it is. It is, you know, a chosen way of life. It's not easy, but relationships in general aren't easy. If you want to have an easy relationship, you know, have one with a rock, because it's just the only way you're ever going to have an easy relationship. None of them
Right.
are easy.
Right.
So, you know, setting that aside, yeah, everything's not for everybody. But if you are a person that wants to be honest and you feel like you can live the lifestyle, you have to try at least once, and don't live in fear. Like, I've never wanted to live my life in fear, and I don't live my life in fear. The things I want to accomplish, I try to accomplish them. At least I can say I tried. May not be successful, but at least I'm going to try. And so that's what you have to do. You have to, you know, don't be fearful that you're going to lose everything that you have. Um, and again, I would say to young people, you know, and to old folks too, we have too much going on in this world to be continually worried about sex and romance. So it works out that, you know, when I was younger, I wanted to have a wife that I could be in business with, a really, you know, an aggressive, money go-getter kind of person. And then I wanted the second wife to be the homemaker, the person that would stay at home and take care of everything so that we, as the power couple, could go out and conquer the world. And then everyone would be happy because, you know, there are women who just, no, they don't want to work. They would much rather, you know, be at home, you know, be domestic and chill. And then you have some women that just don't want to be at home at all. You know, they want to be out there and, you know, have a nanny from day one. And so I've always looked at it that if a man had a good plan and could find a good partner, you know, younger, that they could make a go of it and really have a great life. Because if you have three adults working on something, it's much easier than just having two. You've always got, you know, a backup partner, you know, someone there to help out. And the part about being in business, oh my goodness, I mean, literally, you've got so many young professional women out there. If they could learn to really work with another woman and then even go out and find the man that they're going to make their husband so that they can go out and do what they need to do, even more powerful. I mean, we really have much more important things to do in this world than to be always worried about relationships. But every time we, you know, every 7 to 10 years when the romance or, you know, the newness of relationships gone, if you look for a little bit of fire again, you've got to destroy what you've built. And then somebody, oh Lord, you broke my heart, I'm devastated. Why are you devastated? This is what happens in the world. Relationships last 7 to 10 years when they're full of fire. After that, it becomes like a partnership, a working partnership, and you just got to work. And if you want to have sex with somebody else, fine, just be honest about it. But let's still be about nation building and be about building these businesses and taking care of our communities and doing something else than trying to find somebody that's going to make me feel good. No, you make yourself feel good. Every morning when I wake up, I say my prayers. You know, greetings, Shu, Tefnu, Gebnu, Ra. I say, you know, my prayer to the Necharu, you know, thanking them for this day and making me a part of it. And then I choose at that point to smile. I choose to be happy right there. I invoke happiness in my life at daybreak. And that's where I find happiness. No one's going to make you happy. No one can make you feel anyway. You have to make yourself. You have to, you know, prime your own pump, you know, and, you know, that's where the truth is. It's not about trying to find something outside of yourself. It's about sharing what you have with the world.
Sounds good. Well, let me check my little thing because I think I've answered some of my questions. Do you have anything else you want to share?
Um, yeah, I just want people to be honest about their needs and to really try to have a hard conversation with themselves and with their partners. And again, stop destroying families based on something that's going to happen. That's why when I said that I've been a proponent of truth, I mean, the reality of it is if 50% of marriages are ending, you know, why are they ending? Why aren't we honest about these things?
Well,
If you know the,
interestingly enough, I'm sorry because now it just came through.
okay.
Kenya, you know Kenya K. Stevens.
Of course I do.
She, I think I've been following her for over like 7 years, and I think it was even really before Facebook popped up. It was like through some emails, some forwarded email stuff that people were doing. And I listened to her platform and I was so like, a horse just ran by the way. This island life. Anyway, that is kind of what opened my eyes to what she was saying, because she was talking about the statistics of marriage. And she was saying, if I were to give you a proposal for a business and I were to say to you that this business has a 50% chance of failing, would you invest in this business? And most good investors would say no, because they have a 50-50 chance they'll get their money back pretty much in terms of business. But when you look at the business of marriage, that is the same investment people are making with their emotional lives, that there's going to be a 50% chance that this relationship will not survive. That is super high to put your everything into, right? That is super high. And so that is how she got my attention to the reality of why that's why I'm actually more open to it than I won't say the average, but a lot of people, because just look at the facts. Let's look at it scientifically, okay? Scientifically, there's something wrong with the regular relationship. There's something wrong when a man or a woman feels like they're doing something wrong when they're talking to someone of the opposite sex. Like, I've watched a lot of these YouTube videos about, some woman was like, if your man is talking to another woman, warning. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, really? I don't even have time for that. I don't even care. You know what I'm saying? But there's so much bullshit in relationships where, and a part of it that I guess for me I'm breaking out of is growing up in the Virgin Islands. I did a talk show down there when I was home in June. Is the relationships that women have with one another are so terrible because they are trained. This is like upbringing. They are brought up to not like other women. They are brought up to consider another woman a threat. I grew up there, but I grew up with a mother who is an independent single woman who was a progressive businesswoman, Americanized. So I didn't have those same, like, she didn't tell me no rah-rah like that. But I know girls who grew up that way. They grew up with me, and they would never speak to a guy. They wouldn't even, like, if they were at the mall. I mean, and we're talking high school here. If we're at the mall and they have a boyfriend, they could not even be seen in public talking to a guy. And so that type of upbringing and training already creates a world where there's mistrust. I mean, they're already ingraining mistrust into their life. Instead of having this abundant life where they have all these friends. And that's funny because I went to both public and private schools. And the private schools were mostly white kids or mostly affluent, educated stateside-ers. It was a different world for them. Island kids who mostly were in the public schools, they had one way of being, and the elitist white kids who drove their Benz to school at 16, they had a different type of lifestyle. When I hung out with the white kids, to me, they were polyamorous in the sense everyone dated everyone. When we would go to the movies, it was like 10 or 20 of us. When a cool movie would come out, it was no boyfriend, girlfriend thing. Maybe some people were dating or messing around with each other, but it was a together thing, and
right.
And it was fun though. But it was actually more fun than the local kids who had all these stipulations. We go to a dance. They had like a club thing or some kind of. They would have these dances where it wouldn't be a club, but it would be like someone would DJ at a hall or that kind of thing, and people it would be like people were like stuck in like groups. Like I would want to be like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? I would want to walk through and say hi to everyone and like meet people and socialize. And a lot of women my age at the time, 16, 17, 18, weren't allowed to do that. They were trained not to, and it came from this like patriarchal, insecure type of a way of being that I've had to like scrub my brain out from that because for real, because I hate it. And I just don't even think it's natural, relationships. I went back home for a month and relationships with women have completely changed. I think because, a lot of women are older, of course, and they, come to know who they are. And a lot of them are educated in the States. So they go to the States for college and come home. So they kind of have like that thing. But I have girlfriends from high school who their Facebook profile is their name, their husband's name, and their last name. Like they don't even have their own identity. They have one Facebook account. You know what I mean? And that goes back to
right. Yep.
That goes back to
Yep. Wow.
That goes back to the foolishness that people hear about Facebook drama when someone is like, oh, I see your picture, I'm gonna inbox you. They're not gonna inbox you when you see that your husband and you are attached to the same damn profile. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, I have some friends who have that too. Yep.
So anyway, so that's pretty much my thoughts on this whole thing. I think that hopefully why I named this "Why Men Need More Than One Woman" is just to start some stuff. But you know, and then the way you've kind of broke it down very eloquently, I appreciate that. But I really just want people to realize that it's not one way. You know, it's just
Right.
not
Yep.
one way. And it's not, I mean, I think of it more in theory. I've never practiced that lifestyle, but I do see it working. And especially when people are open, honest, and communicative with one another and plan, you know, like even in the regular average monogamous relationship, they fail because people don't plan, you
Right.
know? So
Yeah.
that's my piece
It's
for
relationships at
today.
work.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, it was a pleasure chatting with you for this last hour.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming in. And this is recorded, so I will send it back out again for those who weren't able to join us. We did have some people watching or listening in periodically. They bounce in and out. So I'm not sure if it's the same people or people came in and out. But it's all good otherwise. And now that it's going to be live on YouTube, then we'll definitely get more folks involved. So the only last thing I would have to say to the people who are listening to this and hearing this is choose honesty. I mean, why live this lie? I just don't get it. And I just don't feel like that is an abundant life. And that is my mission. My mission is to help people create a healthy and abundant life. And this is part of being abundant. Being abundant is being honest with yourself. And that creates more abundance around you. So yes. So everyone have a good night or good day or whenever time you're listening to this or now. And thanks again, Minister Kwabena. And I will talk to you later.
All right. Peace.
All right. Peace.
That's good.